Arise morning show anchor Ayomaro essays had a sit-down with U.S. Undersecretary for Civilian Security, Democracy and Human Rights, Mrs. Uzra Zeya, where she discussed the depth and breadth of U.S.-Nigeria relations, Secretary Blinken's recent visit to Nigeria, U.S. assistance in strengthening democratic institutions, improving transparency and accountability in Nigeria and across the Sahel, human rights and regional security. We'll take this story now.
Following the visit of the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, to Nigeria, the Under-Secretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy and Human Rights, Uzra Zeya, is on a two-country tour to Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire. This is her first visit to Nigeria. The visit, which is aimed at deepening cooperation on democracy, civilian security, and humanitarian efforts with senior government officials, further highlights the commitment of the United States of America to its partnership with Nigeria. Amidst meetings with senior government officials, including the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi SAN, religious leaders, civil society representatives and labor leaders in Lagos and Abuja, the Undersecretary of State sat in an exclusive conversation with Arise News. Well, thank you very much, Madam Undersecretary, for sitting with me on this lovely, shall I say, evening in Lagos, Nigeria. It's so good to have you with us for the first time in Nigeria. Having been with us, once you arrived. But tell me, before we get into the questions and the interview, how has your experience been like?
It has been wonderful. I am so pleased to be here. I've been wanting to come here for a very long time, and it has just been such a warm welcome from the very moment I set foot in Lagos Airport to having the chance to meet so many dynamic leaders from government, from civil society, from the private sector, the creative community, and I am already planning my next visit.
So earlier on, and just before, you had mentioned that you had a delicacy, a Nigerian delicacy.
Yes.
Can you share with me and what your first taste of it was like?
Well, I had the great treat of having my first Nigerian jollof rice, which was simply delectable, and it was with a beautiful barbecued croaker fish. Wow. So my own family heritage is actually from India. So in India, we have a dish biryani with the spiced rice. So it reminded me of that, but it's something very special all its own. Yeah. And I'm asking, why don't we have jollof at McDonald's in the States?
I think that's something you have to take home with you.
Right.
Jollof rice in McDonald's.
Okay.
So if you see that, then you heard that here first. And
but it's an idea.
It's an idea, yeah.
No, but it's healthy. Yeah. It's it's vibrant. It's spicy, and it was just another warm welcome to this beautiful country.
We love it. It's home away from home, and Nigeria is a very welcoming place. We look forward to hosting personalities, people, and we do it very joyfully and with a lot of enthusiasm. So once again, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So in July 2021, a little over 3 years ago, actually, with 4 years in a few months' time, you were sworn in as Undersecretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy and Human Rights. Tell us, what's your priority focus in this role?
Well, it comes through in the title. So I'm focused on strengthening democracy around the world. And this is a job for America at home as well. I think every democracy in the world really has a responsibility to deliver for its people and to do more to improve its democracy. So we were very pleased to welcome Nigeria and 100+ other governments to the first and second Summit for Democracy. And that is a continual focus of my efforts around the world. But second is human rights for all, because we cannot simply say that respecting the rights of the majority is enough if we want to uphold human rights. We need to look at those who are marginalized, those who are left out, and ensure that everyone has the right to express themselves, to freely associate, and ultimately to fulfill their own potential. Civilian security, a major focus for me in my role, and this means human-centered security, security that creates a stable base for prosperity and democracy to grow. And it also means accountable security services that protect the people and are accountable to them. And this informs our cooperation all over the world. Yeah. And just one fourth area that isn't reflected in the title, but it's very important, is humanitarian relief and refugee policy. So we are living through global peak forced displacement, over 130 million people around the world forcibly displaced from home. And the United States is proud to be the world's humanitarian leader, contributing to the UN High Commission of Refugees, International Organization of Migration, on shared solutions to create more protection in place and more safety for people on the move.
Well, you're absolutely right. As part of the relationship that Nigeria enjoys with the United States, one of which is humanitarian support, we have the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. And since it's been set up, we have had quite significant support from the United States of America. So that's great partnership at work there. So thank you very much. Now, talking about the relationship between Nigeria and the United States, your visit is coming on the heels of the 4-country tour by the Secretary of State, Secretary Blinken. And he made a stop here in Nigeria, in Abuja, in Lagos, just like you're doing as well. And we have seen a flurry of activities when it comes to high-level officials of the United States government coming to the African continent, and very specifically in Nigeria. Of course, a number of people are curious.
Right.
Why? In recent years, of course, for obvious reasons, for many years, we've enjoyed very cordial relationships with the United States of America. However, it's curious that just last week, we hosted the Secretary of State. This week, we're hosting the Undersecretary of State. That's amazing, but why, and what's the significance of this? Why the focus at this time on Nigeria and, very importantly, on the African continent?
Well, you're right about the trend lines, and I'm so proud to be able to follow in the footsteps of my boss, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who had a very successful and a very fulfilling visit to Abuja and Lagos just last week. And what does this mean? I think it's because Nigeria matters. You are Africa's largest democracy, largest economy, and President Biden has asked all of us, all of the senior officials in the U.S. government, to work on building partnerships, genuine partnerships with African countries, with African societies, with African entrepreneurs. And the progress of these partnerships in Nigeria, they matter not only for over 200 million Nigerians, but they matter for Africa, they matter for the world. Because in the end, Africa has shaped America's past, it's shaping our present, and it will shape the world's future. So I'm proud to be here, and I'm really proud of the breadth of partnership that I see from between the United States and Nigeria across all my areas of responsibility.
Absolutely. Now, talking about your areas of responsibilities, one of such is democracy.
Yes.
And we cannot talk about the African continent, especially the West African bloc at this time, without touching on a resurgence, as it were, of military hunters in countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and only recently, these three countries have indicated their interest or lack of interest in ECOWAS and have asked to withdraw from the ECOWAS. And so there's that concern around democracies on the African continent and the ripple effect it would have on other countries on the continent. How has the United States, or what does the United States hope to do to support in strengthening democracies across, the African continent, but very specifically in Nigeria? Because as a player on the West African bloc, Nigeria we call ourselves the big brother of not just West African countries, but the African continent as a whole. So what happens in Africa, in Nigeria specifically, in terms of our democracy, has significant impact on the rest of Africa. So I'd like to ask you, what plans, perhaps, does the U.S. have to strengthen democracies or democracy in Nigeria and the rest of the West African bloc?
Right. Well, as you described so aptly, Ayo, there is a very concerning trend in West Africa and beyond in terms of the backsliding, the regression of democracy. This makes our partnerships with countries like Nigeria all the more important, because in the end, in our view, democracy, it's a work in progress. Democracy is not a destination, it is a journey. And it is something that cannot be taken for granted or that we can be complacent about. We have to continually work to strengthen our own democracies, to defend democracy and to protect it. And in this context, I want to say, with respect to the developments in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, we absolutely support the efforts of ECOWAS, and we support and appreciate Nigeria's leadership as ECOWAS president. We want to see a restoration of elected democratic governance in these countries. In the case of Niger, we want to see the immediate release of President Bazoum. And we also see the centrality and the crucial aspect of ECOWAS's role, not just in these contexts, but in terms of the overall objective of a more peaceful, a more prosperous, and ultimately a more successful region.
Excellent, thank you. Now, still talking on, beyond democracy is also security. I mean, your portfolio also deals with civilian security. And when we look at Nigeria, the landscape currently, we're faced with, insecurity at one of its highest points, which is quite unfortunate. But we understand and we know that we have enjoyed support from the United States of America with regards to the U.S.-Nigeria Security Cooperation.
Yes.
What kind of assistance are you looking to give to strengthen and to support the efforts of our security agencies in tackling insecurity?
Absolutely. We're very proud of the depth of our security partnership with Nigeria. And just to give you a sense of it, since 2017, the United States has provided more than $650 million in security assistance to Nigeria, for the benefit of the Nigerian people. Now, in the areas of work that I oversee, some of the cooperation that we fostered are, in the domain of supporting access to justice, helping Nigeria's judicial system better respond, better manage cases, leverage the use of technology to ensure that the people's complaints are heeded and taken action upon. Just yesterday in Lagos, I was able to visit a partnership project that we're very proud to support, and this is something called the Complaint Response Unit, the CRU, of the National Police Force. This initially started as a pilot, and it was a Nigerian concept from which we were able to offer U.S. support in cooperation with the UN Office of Drugs and Counter-Narcotics, UNODC, and it has allowed the people of Nigeria from all over the country, whether they're calling in or sending via WhatsApp or social media, to report incidents of potential police misconduct or abuse. And there is a system in place to ensure they're acted upon. Now, I'm happy to share with you, Ayo, that this project is going to be expanding to 4 of Nigeria's largest cities, including here in Lagos.
Yes.
So this is an example of the kind of cooperation we're proud to support that helps deliver better security for the people of Nigeria.
That's excellent, thank you. And only yesterday, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, had launched the training, a special training for the Special Intervention Squad. And it was in partnership with the United States Bureau. So that's really fantastic to see, not just investment or support in terms of financial support, but actually a support in terms of training as
well. Training, professionalization, all rooted in accountability and protection of the people.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, another area of support that we will definitely touch on is in tackling this menace of corruption.
Absolutely.
Now, you would understand because in Nigeria, it's one of the biggest, shall we say, one of the most significant obstacles to economic development, our democratic progress, and also actually does have an impact on insecurity.
Exactly.
So, with the United States and the relationship that Nigeria enjoys with the United States, what are ways that you can help support Nigeria in its fight against corruption?
Absolutely. I mean, you are so right about the menace that corruption represents. And it really is a threat to democracies large and small, emerging, established. And this is why President Biden in 2021 elevated the fight against corruption as a core national security priority. So this is a very important aspect of our relations with Nigeria. It's an issue that I brought up in all of my government meetings. And I think that the partnership that we see between our two countries has really produced results. Just the cooperation between the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice, and your government has helped return more than $350 million in stolen assets that were held hidden overseas by former government and corrupt officials and return them to the people. So that's a very concrete way that we are delivering on anti-corruption. But there are also important aspects in terms of multilateral cooperation. The United States is the president for the next 2 years of the Conference of States Parties for the UN Convention Against Corruption, of which Nigeria is a member. And we hosted the 10th Annual Conference of States Parties in Atlanta just in December. It was the largest ever. We had a robust Nigerian delegation led by the Minister of Justice. But we also had leaders from Nigerian civil society and the first ever civil society forum for this conference. In terms of concrete results, Nigeria put forth a resolution on beneficial ownership, which is a means by which corrupt actors are able to hide their ill-gotten gains in some of the wealthiest countries in the world. This resolution was adopted. We want to continue to work closely with Nigeria and other partners because we have to do more to strengthen our own systems, our own protections, to ensure that kleptocrats are stopped in their tracks and held accountable.
Brilliant. Well, we're just about to wrap up. It's been such a great conversation with you, but I have to touch on one other aspect, which is part of your portfolio, which is human rights.
Of course.
And you cannot talk about strengthening democracies without talking about the upholding of human rights of the citizens of the country.
Right.
And I know that this is an area that the U.S. is very passionate about and champions human rights across different countries. And Nigeria is also a partner in that. We're very big on upholding and supporting the human rights. I mean, we're signed to the Convention of the United Nations Human Rights Commission. So tell us, in what way can we collaborate to strengthen and deepen further upholding of the human rights of Nigerian citizens, because it's mutually benefiting. We learn from the US can also learn a few things from Nigeria.
Exactly.
So what are some of the ways that we can collaborate to uphold the human rights of Nigerians?
So many different dimensions. I mean, we talked about security partnership, and here I have to say, we have to recognize there is a real challenge of civilian insecurity in Nigeria. Certainly in the Northeast with a terrorism dimension, in the Northwest with banditry, with the very troubling phenomenon of kidnapping for ransom, which I think touches, afflicts Nigerians from all walks of life. So in terms of our security partnerships, an important human rights aspect is mitigating civilian harm, increasing civilian protection. So when there are incidents of civilian harm, that there is not only investigations, but there is accountability. So the public trust can grow and we can ensure that there's not a recurrence. But there's also the fundamentals, freedom of association, freedom of expression. I've just been so awed by the dynamism of Nigerian civil society, and that is something you cannot take for granted.
Very proud of them.
You should be.
Very
you should
proud.
be very proud, including journalists like yourselves. free and independent media. In too many countries in the world, these institutions are under attack. So, as I said before, we can't be complacent. We can't take them for granted. We have to celebrate your roles. We have to listen. We have to hold one another to account. And that, I think, is one of the strongest guarantees we can have that societies will progress and that rights will be upheld.
Excellent. Societies will progress and rights being upheld. Thank you so much, Undersecretary Zeya, for speaking to me today in Lagos. But before I let you go, finally, I have to teach you a few words. So when you go back, you go with a little bit of Nigeria. So you've eaten our jollof rice. You've had our
jollof rice.
Barracuda fish.
Yes.
Made the Nigerian way. So let me teach you how to say hello.
Okay.
In Pidgin. So Pidgin is universal in Nigeria.
Yes,
let me not give you one of the languages. So you say how far?
How fun.
Well done.
How fun.
How far? How far?
How far?
I did. Thank you so much for speaking to me today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay with us here and eat. You must eat amala.
Amala.
Tuwo.
Tuwo.
And ofe oweri.
Okay. Somebody write this down for me.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your stay here with us.
Thank you so much.
All right, a very good interview there. I must commend you. You know, you're doing very well. You're doing well.
Thanks, Ifa. It was a good opportunity. It was her first time in Nigeria, and she was quite passionate about the work that she does, especially in the area, obviously, of civilian security. Had the opportunity to touch on a few things. Also looked at democracy. Touched also on human rights, and you could feel the passion as she spoke. Very importantly, I thought it was an opportunity for Nigeria there to solidify its relationships with the United States of America in terms of what we enjoy in mutually benefiting opportunities for trainings, support in the area of strengthening democracies and the like. So it was a good interview. I had a good time,
Very, very good one. And also I like the cultural aspects you put to it with the jollof jollof.
I had to put that in there. Absolutely, proudly Nigerian. Let her go back to the United States and tell them that she ate something that she's never eaten before.
But they have something like, I think jambalaya rice is sort of like your jollof rice.
Yeah, but it's never the same. Never the same. But yes, thank you so much to
especially they don't have the firewood at which you cook it.
But I mean, if you were there, what would you have liked to hear her say or ask her?
I mean, cooperation in terms of human rights is key. Let's not deceive ourselves. It's never been this bad. Flagrant disregard for human life. Ethnic-based killings, insurgency killings. It's like there's a total disrespect for human lives in Nigeria. And those are the factors, I would have liked to, also discuss, with her. Also various petitions by religious groups to America because it's been targeted and skewed towards, particular religious groups and things like that. And also the general malaise on the African continent. But that we see hope and we see prosperity.
Yes, hopefully she will return again on her visit. She's off to Cote d'Ivoire. She's just doing a 2-country tour this time. And she's had it was a full schedule for her. I was just trying to manage the time to squeeze in. But that was an Arise exclusive and they had the opportunity to sit down to speak with her.